a sizable crowd full of signs in support of the police department stands outside City Hall with the head of the Seattle Police Officers Guild making his voice heard.
Everybody's safety is at risk with this radical agenda by elected officials.
This group of protesters want the talks of defunding police to stop. Ahead of Monday's potential vote, this became the spot where two ideals stood face to face: support for and against Seattle police. Though a smaller crowd, counter-protesters stood across 4th Avenue, with the streets separating the ideologies to go against the group at City Hall. It wouldn't take long for this group to eventually make its way onto the street to get closer to their counterparts. Overall, this was what happened throughout most of the afternoon, with the Defending SPD protesters hearing from speakers and blasting music, while the Defunding SPD protesters chanted in the street. At one point, a group holding a Proud Boys flag made its way through the street, and when counter-protesters followed them to 3rd and James, the two sides clashed. Black Lives Matter protesters used pepper spray, while members of the Proud Boys countered with bear spray.
We know it is highly unlikely that we will see a 50% cut to the budget, at least when it comes to this year, 2021, still up in the air. Protesters against police brutality had been pushing for exactly that, and so was Shama Sawant, a council member down here, but there's just not enough support for that, it looks like, heading into tomorrow. And with the Defend SPD camp, they came out in massive numbers. Packing the steps of City Hall, a rally to back the blue and push back against city council members ahead of a huge vote Monday that would cut portions of the Seattle police budget.
I want the public to know that there are many people from communities of color and disenfranchised communities that support law enforcement.
For those wanting to defund the department, they showed up across the street. They want to see that money invested in programs that lift up black and brown communities. Although some on the defense side say that can be had without what's being proposed.
Just because we need more social programs does not mean we have to defund the SPD. We can have both. We can fund the SPD, fund crime prevention, fund law enforcement.
Among those on the other side of this issue, those who want a 50% cut, is David Lewis.
This isn't saying abolish the police altogether. This is saying put the funds in the organizations that actually decrease the crime that we have here. If you increase education, housing, and welfare in these neighborhoods, we won't have crime.
And while that 50% cut has a slim chance of happening, Lewis poses this question for those supporting the city's officers.
Do you really think that SPD, a police department that had to get the consent form applied to them because of their amount of police brutality in this city, is truly doing their job appropriately?
Many of us have seen it. Homeless and RV campers like this one in Ballard, or homeless camping in tents like seen here in the Queen Anne Greenbelt. Cindy Pierce with the Neighborhood Safety Alliance wonders if the Seattle Police Department's navigation team is cut, who will deal with the flourishing homeless encampments? She's also worried about crime.
I'm sad for the city. I am sad for the city of Seattle if the navigation team gets cut. We're going to see more garbage, more drugs, more violence, and we need the navigation team. We need our police.
Pierce says the team of officers and outreach workers develop relationships with campers as they try and get them to move into shelters.
I've seen them work. You know, hi, Joe, it's me again. Got to get you into a shelter. Oh, yeah, hi, Sergeant Zur. You know, they all know them.
But City Council proposed to cut the navigation team. Some nonprofit groups who work with the homeless say that would be a good move. Dan Malone with the Downtown Emergency Service Center tells KOMO News, quote, "We need better alternatives for people living unsheltered. The navigation team work often results in just moving people around." DESC also says there just isn't enough housing that is accessible and affordable to people. Back to Cindy Pierce. She says the navigation team keeps a close eye on homeless camps. She says she's worried about potential drug and prostitution problems.
If you don't have a police force going in and checking on that, I can see it developing into even a bigger, worse situation than it already is.
Well, Mary, some legal experts say get ready for this grand social experiment because most legal options to fight the council on this one have been exhausted.
who is it that's going to answer those calls for service?
Chief Carmen Best, Mayor Jenny Durkin, and the Seattle Police Officers Guild.
Go to stopdefunding.com and add your name to the growing list of citizens who support the Seattle Police.
Have all tried to stop the City Council's effort to defund SPD.
We are going forward on a grand social experiment.
But Attorney Scott Lindsay says they're just delaying.
This is a veto-proof council majority for sure.
The inevitable.
We will have a smaller police department than we did for 2019.
Monday will be a huge day for the debate as the council goes through more amendments and then takes final votes on what members say is their first step toward defunding SPD. Earlier in the week, council members did not advance a proposed 50% cut to SPD's remaining budget, but did approve cuts to mounted police, the SWAT team, and other areas of the agency.
There's one last wild card.
Lindsay's the former City of Seattle public safety advisor and says SPD still needs to maintain compliance with the consent decree. And if budget cuts interfere with any federal oversight of the agency, a judge could step in.
He may have a final word reviewing some of these cuts.
Right, and the word from the people who put these statistics together is that wearing of masks and social distancing really apparently are working. Now, the whole thing comes out, as we know, COVID-19 continues to spread from person to person, but the rate of spread is what has the experts focusing on. It's called the R-naught number. When it's 1, that means one person spreads to one other person. When it's above 1, COVID is spreading more. When it's below 1, COVID is being brought under control. Well, the Institute for Disease Modeling, IDM, estimates the transmission rate in Western Washington at 1.1, down slightly from last week. And for Eastern Washington, it is now below 1 for the first time at 0.8. Now, the timeline shows you how both sides of the mountain state have been approaching 1. And now Eastern Washington, the one in red, that line is dipping below 1.
What we found overall this past week is that there's some encouraging signs. In particular, transmission rates have declined with timing that's consistent with the masking mandates. So the no mask, no service mandate in early July and the statewide masking mandate in late June, those seem to be bearing fruit in terms of the effects on cases, COVID-19 cases, as well as on transmission rates that we estimate with the model.
But what the modeling also shows is not good, and that's that the numbers of COVID cases in people over 40 is actually growing. And the older you are, the more vulnerable you are. There's concern hospitalizations could rise, and so could deaths. And to prevent that, they say, follow the advice they continue to give. Wear masks, stay socially distant, wash your hands, and stay home if you can. Reporting live at home, Mount Rainier, Keith Eldridge, KOMO News.
All right, thanks, Keith.